Now I'm joined by the former Strategic and Communications Director for the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. He's also co-founder of the Momentum Group, which was set up to support Jeremy Corbyn's leadership bid of the Labour Party. James, lovely to see you in the studio. Thank you for joining me. I wondered whether you saw Tony Blair interviewing Keir Starmer in the week. I'm just pointing to this interview in The Telegraph with Michael Gove, who described it as like a superstar and someone from a shabby tribute band. It's like seeing Mick Jagger and someone from the counterfeit Stones, as it were. Do you agree with that analysis?
I mean, it is a bit first as tragedy, then as farce, unfortunately. I mean, Starmer and his team are pursuing a strategy quite similar to Blair in the 90s, but in extremely different conditions.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, when the economy is growing and it looks like it's set to grow, wages are rising. If you say we're going to stick to Tory spending plans for the first couple of years, you've still got more money coming in because tax receipts are going up, the economy is growing.
Yeah.
We're now in a condition where wages are at the level they were in 2005. We basically had 2 lost decades, not even 1 lost decade. So it doesn't fit. So it does feel like a tribute act, but not a particularly good one because the audience has changed.
But it's a better tribute act than Corbyn succeeded in winning support for, because actually, to be fair, under Starmer, Labour have done better in these by-elections than Corbyn ever did, right?
These are two, well, in one of the by-elections, absolutely fantastically. But it does show part of the problem in Labour's strategy, because these are some of the worst by-election results for a government ever. And rather than being on the front foot and Labour saying, right, and now this means we're on track for government and we're going to do A, B, C and D, they're having infighting and, you know, punching themselves in the face.
I still think that Corbyn would have done any better. I mean, Blair congratulated Starmer because he said what he'd ended was this existential crisis for the Labour Party and the way that the party was left after the annihilation of Corbyn in 2019.
No, I mean, obviously I completely disagree. What happened under Corbyn's leadership is that the Labour Party changed its position from being basically trying to be the nicer side of the establishment to trying to represent the majority of the people in the country, and we changed policy and we changed political debate, political direction.
The support of the majority of people in the country for that.
No, in the first election we fought, we got 13 million votes, and in the second election we had a terrible policy on Brexit, and we did badly. And also we did the average of how Labour have done in the last 10 elections, and the Tories did extremely well. And the key issue there was Brexit. We had a bad policy on Brexit.
But why did Corbyn sort of flush his Brexit principles down the toilet then? Because he was a staunch Brexiteer from the very beginning.
So we were under... There wasn't a lot of support in the Labour Party for having what I would view to be a sensible Brexit policy. There are 2 possible policies you could have as Labour. Right, one is you say, we're Democrats, the EU isn't, in fact, the most wonderful thing that's ever existed, so we're leaving and we're going to find the most progressive Labour way to leave. That's one coherent one. The other one is you say, this is a disaster, and so we're going to make it the most Brexit in name only thing we can do, or if possible, overturn it. And the problem is we have both of those coming next to each other. And the first one, which I think is better both politically and also in outcome policy terms, I think it's more correct. That one would never had the strength in the party.
Yeah. On Corbyn himself, I mean, there's been a little bit of what I've described as a Corbynaissance. The chair of the Labour Party in Uxbridge resigned on Friday, sort of said that Jeremy Corbyn had done more for the party than Starmer had. We've now got talk of Corbyn perhaps running for London Mayor as an independent. Is that credible, those reports?
So I would really love to see a radical mayor for London.
But will Corbyn do it, James?
I don't imagine so.
Why not?
Well, I mean,
he's not ruling it out. He's gone on the airwaves, and people keep asking him, and he's not ruling it out.
Well, he's not ruling out. He's not ruling out anything. But he doesn't need to be bounced into making a decision by Robert Peston or whoever is interviewing him.
Well, I mean, he can just say yes or no, whether he's doing it or whether he isn't. I mean, that would provide some clarity, right?
Yes, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. He's allowed to make his own choices in his own time, I think.
Should he have the Labour whip restored, do you think?
I think it's very unlikely given what's happened, but, I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, he shouldn't have had it removed in the first place. I mean, I don't support in any way, shape or form Keir Starmer's war on the left, on the trade unions, on the membership of the party.
Well, has he waged war on the trade unions? I mean, you know...
Yeah, so yesterday, the GMB, who've always supported him, walked out of the National Policy Forum that they're having at the moment, partly because, according to the briefings, his office was being rude to them while they were rowing back on some key policies to do with workers' rights. So he has, he has done that. He said that people couldn't go and stand, his people couldn't go and stand on picket lines after winning the leadership election on the basis of standing shoulder to shoulder with the trade unions.
So what are you saying? You think he's betraying the left? He's betraying his own voters by not showing solidarity with the strikers?
Well, he won...
Jamie Driscoll situation.
I mean, you see all of that.
He wasn't allowed to stand because he was a Corbynista.
Yeah, because he was already mayor. Starmer won the Labour leadership election on a programme which said, look, we'll shave off about 20% of the Corbyn programme and I'll wear a suit and I'll be less able to be attacked by the media because I'm more of an establishment figure and I'm going to do this well. And then he has, bit by bit, gone in the other direction, changed all of those policies. So that is the programme on which he won the election on. The leadership election. It's also would be a good programme to go to the public on. I mean, if you look at the polling of most of those policies, they poll, often the majority of Tory voters like those things, and then the supermajority of other voters. But that's not his strategy. His strategy is let the Tories implode and take over. So he wants the minimum amount of friction possible, which is why there isn't really very much of a narrative. If you look at Blair at this time in opposition, he's set out the 5 pledges that are going to dominate the election. There's a clear narrative about what he's doing. The reason after these historic terrible by-elections for the Tory party, Labour aren't coming out and saying, we're about this now and we're going to get into government, but instead of talking about, oh, our mayor lost our own election campaign, oh, we're trying, we haven't fought the left enough, all of this infighting, because there isn't a clear narrative.
But on ULEZ, they're right, aren't they? I mean, shouldn't Khan just scrap ULEZ because it's not popular with people in London? And Angela Rayner, do you agree with Angela Rayner when she said Londoners can't afford this?
No, I don't. I think this is, again, you fall into the defensive narrative, which is what Labour...
Yeah, but hang on, you're meant to be representative of the working people, and it's working people who are saying, we can't afford this, I'm driving a white van, I'm a nurse doing shift work, I can't pay £12.50 to go in and out of outer London.
So I agree that there could be and should be some changes to the policy. I think the money that's raised from it should go straight into the scrappage scheme, so it's presented as a positive to people, and you could do it in particular categories. If you're self-employed and you need to drive for work, then you get privileged position to get a new car or get financing for a new car. There are ways in which you could improve the policy, and I don't think the comms around it and the framing has been particularly good. But to win one by-election massively, to come close in another one which you haven't held ever before, and to make the main takeaway, oh no, we need to self-flagellate, is not very clever politics.
You're not a big fan of Starmer at all, are you? Who would you rather led the Labour Party?
I probably shouldn't say almost anyone, should I? Almost anyone, yeah.
Really?
Almost anyone, yeah.
Well, who? Would you prefer to see Angela Rayner in charge?
I'd prefer to see Angela Rayner. I would prefer to see Ed Miliband. I'd prefer to see Lucy Powell. I'd prefer to see Jonathan Ashcroft. I mean, there are a lot of them.
Do you think Starmer's actually going to cost Labour the next election? I mean, in terms of they're looking like they've got a good chance of winning it, being 20-plus points ahead. But do you think as a personality and as a politician he's a dud?
I don't think he's going to cost them the election because living standards in this country have been falling now for almost 2 decades. The conditions that people are in are really, really bad, and I think it's very unlikely that a government that's been in power for 14, 15 years at that point gets re-elected. But do I think that Starmer is a net positive onto that Labour vote? No, I don't think so.
OK. James Schneider, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.